Okay, it has been overcast all day. I think it's gonna rain, so we're gonna lean into it. I've got a candle going, I've got a mug of Earl Grey tea, and some pumpkin cream cookies for today's hangout. Today's video is going to be a chatty one, so I invite you to grab something to drink, grab a snack, a journal or a planner, and get cozy while we hang out and have an honest chat about how I've been easing back into my routine after taking a 2.5 week break. If that sounds like something you'd be interested in, then settle in and we'll get right into it. For some context, I recently came back from a 2.5 week vacation in Japan. It was honestly everything that I was hoping it would be and more, which is amazing because sometimes I build things up in my head and it can be really disappointing when reality doesn't meet my expectations, and that was definitely not the case with Japan. It was amazing. I'm planning on doing some more videos talking about my experience. They will very likely be stationary focused, and I'll talk about some of my key highlights and experiences while I was there. But in this video, I'm going to fast forward to the end of my vacation and talk to you about what it's been like since I've been home. I'll start off by saying that I haven't completely picked up everything that I was doing before I left in terms of my trackers and planners. And I'll do a flip through to show you where I'm at, but it was really important for me to practice some self-compassion when it came to coming back, because I know that I'm someone who tends to struggle with all or nothing thinking, and it's something that kind of goes hand in hand with my perfectionism tendencies. But it's that kind of thinking that will say things like, I have to catch up so that I can have a full planner for the year. Or what's the point of continuing to update these planners once I've lost momentum? And I know from past experience that when I get really hyper focused on something, it becomes something that I will be extremely consistent with until I have some interruption or something that disrupts my schedule or my routine. And as soon as I fall out of that pattern, it's really difficult for me to pick it up again and pick up where I left off. So it's catastrophizing and thinking of experiences like that usually have me worried about whether I'm going to be able to pick up where I left off on something that I've been really consistent about if I take a break. And so going on vacation, I'm so grateful we were able to go, but there was a part of me that was worried that once I left all of these planners behind, that was it, and I wasn't going to be able to pick up where I left off and continue filling these out, because if you look through my health and wellness tracker, for example, I've been consistently updating this ever since I started it, which was November 27th. So every single week has been filled out. And there was a part of me that wanted to bring this with me to Japan simply because I was afraid that if I didn't have this in front of me and if I didn't fill it out while I was away, then I was just going to abandon the book and not come back and finish it. And I recognize how that sounds as I'm talking to you right now, but these are the types of things that go through my head because it's really easy for me to recall situations where I failed in my mind. So having a fear of breaking routine can really prevent me from taking breaks at all, and I recognize that's not healthy. To be honest, I haven't taken a proper vacation like this since 2019. Obviously, there were world events that prevented us from going away, and then once things started to open up again, we started to do small trips, but there weren't really any trips that required me to make some tough decisions about leaving things behind. And all of those other little mini trips we did, I totally brought my Hobonichis with me, but when it came to Japan, made the decision to only bring my traveler's notebook, and that was a really great decision because I really wasn't doing that much planning, and I did have things set up so I was able to log some of my health and wellness stuff, which I will talk about shortly. All that to say is I knew I was going to struggle when I came home. I knew I was going to have all my books sitting on my desk, having not been filled out for 2.5 weeks. And I knew I was gonna pressure myself to catch up. And that was actually something that I was really prepared to face. So I had lots of time to think about what I was going to bring to Japan, and then I had lots of time to expect those feelings to come. And I would say that was one of the things that helped me ease into my routine, was to adjust my expectations based on past experience and knowing how I was going to feel so I could almost prepare for those feelings. I know that one of my patterns when I face uncomfortable situations is to avoid those things. So I focused on really preparing for the feeling of discomfort, wanting to avoid things or give up on things. And instead, I tried to put what energy I did have when I got home into staying in that discomfort and also not putting too much pressure on myself to get right back into my full routine. So before we left, I was meal planning consistently. I was updating all of my books consistently. I was using my Hobonichi original for planning. I was using my weekly supplement for scheduling. And then I was tracking my health and wellness in this Hobonichi. Coming back, I knew that I was going to be jet lagged. I knew I was going to have a lot to catch up on, and therefore I didn't put any pressure on myself to catch up in these books. For example, if you flip through my meal plan, you can see this is where I was at. We left Toronto on this day, and these pages are blank. I'm not sure if I'm going to go back and fill these in. If I have time, I think it would be fun to maybe add some memories of some of our favorite meals while we were away, but I don't have the information of what I ate for breakfast, lunch, and dinner for every single day. It's okay if I don't go back and fill this out. The first week that we were back, so this is the first week we were back, you can see I did no meal planning. Oh, let me just move that up. Sorry, I just realized that wasn't quite in frame. So I didn't do any meal planning. Originally, I had thought maybe I would do some meal planning because we had just been away for so long, we had spent so much money, and I was wanting to jump right back into our routine and feel some sense of normalcy. However, I knew also that we were going to be extremely tired, and so on the flight home, we made the decision to order takeout the night that we got back, so we wouldn't have to worry about the fact that we had no groceries, and we wouldn't have to rush to the grocery store to pick up anything. Then the next day, we went to the grocery store and we picked up the essentials. So we didn't do any kind of meal planning. We just got milk, eggs, bananas, the types of things that we knew we would need to kind of help us get by. And we also took stock of what was in our freezer, and we kind of made the decision to make it a freezer meal week where we would just pick whatever we had in our freezer and eat that, and then when we ran out we would get takeout. And the plan was to go grocery shopping on the Saturday that we got back after we had sort of recovered, which is what we did. So eventually I got back into the habit of meal planning, and you can see here, went ahead and I made the meal plan for the next 2 weeks. So this was one of the ways that we eased back into the routine, where we didn't come home and try to jump right back into what we were doing before. We focused on just eating what we had already on hand that would be easy, and then made plans to start getting back on track almost a week after we got home. So from a meal planning perspective, this worked really well for us. And we didn't beat ourselves up too much for having takeout the night we got back, and we ended up ordering takeout again on Saturday. Yeah, so that was something that really helped us from a meal planning perspective. Another thing that really helped us when we got back was we focused on the highest priority things only and really deprioritized anything that wasn't something that we absolutely had to put our energy and attention towards. Because we had taken all this time off work, both of us went right back into work pretty much the day after we got back. So that being the highest priority thing, that is one of the reasons why we deprioritized meal planning and cooking, because dealing with jet lag and going back to work the next day was already a lot for us. Another thing that we had to prioritize was picking up Coconut. So in addition to going back to work, any spare time that we had was spent picking up Coconut. And unfortunately, he came back with a couple of things that we needed to get checked out. So we did have to go ahead and book a vet appointment for later on in that week. So those were the kinds of things that we had to prioritize. And then in addition, we had some house issues. So we had to take care of house maintenance things. And then by the weekend, we planned our grocery shopping and just checked in with family. And then Saturday, I know this isn't really high priority, but it was also Scriptus, which is the Toronto Pen Show, and I did end up attending that show. So things like laundry, going back to work, picking up Coconut, taking care of him, those are the things that were the highest priority that we focused on getting done. Things that we deprioritized, unpacking our suitcase. So I know everybody handles things differently. For me, while it is ideal to unpack my suitcase the second I get home so that I don't have to stare at a suitcase, we just did not have the energy to do that throughout the week since we went right back into work. And so unpacking the suitcase didn't happen until this week, which is the second week that we've been home. And yes, that meant we had to look at a suitcase on our floor for a week, and that might drive some people crazy, but it is what it is. It just wasn't a high priority for us. Also, I didn't rush into getting back into a workout routine. So if I open up to the week we were back, you'll see here that I did one run and I did no strength training. So I also sometimes struggle to take breaks from my exercise routine. Despite having developed a pretty regular exercise routine that I've maintained for quite some time now, there's a part of me that still worries if I take too much time off, then I'll just fall off the wagon and I won't get back into it. So it has taken a lot of mindfulness and reflection and reminding myself that 2 weeks of a break doesn't negate years of building a habit. And even if there's one more week where I'm just not prioritizing workouts, it doesn't mean that all of a sudden I'm just never going to do any kind of exercise again. And in fact, this week I've already gotten back into something that resembles a little more of where I was at before we left. So prioritizing sleep and trying to work through the jet lag and focusing on getting back onto a regular sleeping schedule was more important to me than forcing myself to get back into a workout routine. So that is a trade-off I made, and I think that worked out pretty well. When I was more consistently training for marathons, I used to get injured all the time. And something that I would struggle a lot with was if I was given a workout schedule, I was really good at following it to a T. I'm very good at following instructions. But if I got injured and I missed a few workouts, taking that time off was agonizing because first it was disrupting a routine and a schedule that I had been building up and kind of relying on. But even harder was when I was coming back to running. And I found that after you've taken time off for an injury, it's not realistic to jump right back into doing the exact same workouts that you were doing before you were injured. And what my physio would always encourage me to do is to just slowly integrate exercise back and build up back up to that level, which doesn't necessarily need to take as long as the first time it took you to build up to that level, but I did need to have a progressive return to whatever level I was at. And I've always hung on to that philosophy, and I think it does make sense in this situation as well, where I do have multiple books that I'm updating on a regular basis. And I'm honestly okay with that because they have different purposes. I like compartmentalizing. I don't necessarily notice on a daily basis how many things there are to update until you take a break and come back, and it can feel really daunting to think, oh, I need to update this and then this and this. So I've been really focused on a very slow, progressive return back into my planner routine. And what that looked like in my health and wellness was I just ignored the past while I was away, even though I did log these things in my traveler's notebook passport monthly insert, which I showed in my last video. I mostly just ignored those pages and opened it up to the week that I was back, and I just focused on filling out where I left off. Eventually I went back and I filled out these past dates. I think I did this on the weekend while we were watching a movie, but you can even see here, it's not like it's completely done. I've kind of filled out whatever information I had. I haven't even colored in the weather. I haven't filled in the high and the average for each of the days because I don't even know if I can access that information. And other than that, I'm focused on continuing to use this for my daily tracking, which is what this was always intended to do. So it was a gradual return. It did feel a little bit foreign to be tracking things again in this book after stepping away from it. But by the end of the week, felt like almost no time had passed. So this is back on track, and I'm glad to be in it because I've been consistently updating this since November 27th of last year. So I'm really looking forward to getting to the end of the year and having a full health and wellness tracker to look back on in future years. So I'm really happy with where I'm at with this book. As for the original, I took a very similar approach to my meal planning and my health and wellness tracker. I didn't worry too much about all of the empty days, and I opened this up and I proceeded to use this for my planning. So the first day we were back, I didn't do any planning at all because we got back in the evening, but I did use this page to double check all of the pens that I had left at home when we were away, just to see if they were still working. And they were, although the Pilot Vanishing Point in medium turned my autumn and auburn from something that looked like this color to this really dark color, and at first I didn't even know what ink was in here until I continued to write with it, and it returned to the color that it was before. So I thought that was interesting to see how much the color darkened, and I'm guessing it's because maybe it dried out a little bit. And you can see here it's not that full. I wouldn't really say I was functioning at 100% in the first week that I was back, so I wasn't really all that productive, but I think it was just the habit of opening this up and using it at the bare minimum, and that really got me back into the habit of using this again. And I would say about a week and a half since we've been back, now I'm feeling a lot more acquainted with this, and I'm kind of back to where I was before with using this as my daily planner. And over the weekend while I was watching a movie, I did go ahead and use those blank pages to copy the things that I had logged in my passport, and I just added more detail. Now I kind of have a log of what we did on our trip, and that is going to help me with things like my 5-year journal, which, full disclosure, I have not updated at all since we've been back. So this is definitely something that is now looming over me because I have been very consistent with this book. But now I'm 2.5, 3, maybe close to 4 weeks behind on updating this 5-year. And it does feel a little scary to be behind. I also know that I have a record of what happened while we were away, so it won't be too hard for me to use this to jog my memory, and then my plan is to write a highlight from each of the days during the trip. And then, just like I've done with my other books, I will simultaneously continue updating my journal as if I hadn't missed all those pages. So I will pick up where I left off and I will continue to update what's going on moving forward. So it might take me a little bit of time to catch up from my Japan trip as I'm also updating this in real time, but I'm okay with that because there isn't really a date for when I need to have this all completed by. Obviously, the sooner I complete it, the better, because memories are a little fresher in my mind. But this is meant to be a long-term memory keeper anyway, so if it means that I need a little more time to update this and catch up, that's okay. I can see it's getting really dark, so I'm just gonna turn on a light and see if that helps. Hopefully that helps a little bit with the lighting. I'm really sorry about the lighting today. I have a long-term goal of having these books filled up and be something that I can flip through at the end of the year. And the fact that I've maybe got some more blank pages because I've gone away, I mean, there's a few ways that I can look at it. One of the ways I could look at it is just to leave them blank and not even worry about going back and updating them, because I've been pretty consistent. If I have some blank pages, so be it. The other thing I can do is I can just take my time going back and filling things out if it makes sense. And in this case, I really wanted to have a log of what we had done because I had already been logging that while we were away, and we were kind of using a few different apps to track like where we were staying and where we were going and checking into different places. So I thought it would be really nice to have a source of truth that I could go back on one day. So if we ever go back to Japan, this would be a really good reference. So it did take me some time to look up some of the places that we attended, and some of them didn't even have English translations. So I did my best to copy out the Japanese name of some of the places. And this is probably not going to be all that helpful if we want to go back to a certain place. But it was a fun exercise anyway, and now I have a log of my trip in my original, which I think is amazing. I've never logged a trip to this level of detail before, so this is new for me. But now that I have it, I'm so happy because I don't have the greatest memory, and if you asked me what happened on trips in the past, I honestly would struggle to tell you much more than the country that I visited or maybe the city that I visited. But unless I'm scrolling through photos, I don't really remember much, and I don't want to lose those precious memories. Like, this was such a dream trip that I really don't want to forget the small details. Knowing that I have this long-term goal of having a completed book that I can flip through at the end of the year is something that has really motivated me to put the effort into getting back into it. And I also want to acknowledge that everybody is different. So if you don't care so much about having a completed book, then there's no need to go back and fill in the pages. I don't think there's anything wrong with having blank pages. And I think I even have some blank pages in here despite using this pretty regularly, and I think that's perfectly acceptable. It's just, for me personally, I've made it through 10 months of filling this out pretty consistently, and I would like to get to the end of the year. I hope this was helpful in terms of being really honest. The last thing I guess I'll show you is over here. You might be able to see it's pretty blank. These may stay blank, or maybe I will add something to this. So I will do a full flip through the end of the year and I'll update you on whether I've done anything with these pages or not. But it honestly doesn't stress me out too much that these are blank, and I don't see a need to go back and fill all of these out with what I did during those days because I've got that information here. So I don't think I'm going to duplicate the information, but I might if I feel like it. If you're still here, thank you so much for sticking around and watching this chatty video. I'm still kind of getting back into the routine of making videos, and if you are someone who tends to prefer the videos where I share more of the research topics, those are coming back. Please bear with me. I'm still, it's just taking me a little longer to get back into the routine of everything as evidenced here. So we are taking baby steps. We are slowly updating our planners and journals, mostly focusing my energy on getting back into work. And if you have any topics that you would like me to cover, I'm always open to suggestions, so please feel free to reach out to me and I will do my best to accommodate them. Otherwise, thank you so much for sticking around with me to the end of this video, and I hope you're doing well, and I will see you soon in the next video. Bye!